So recently there was a consumer poll that was released by Activision Blizzard that was asking customers whether they were okay with spending $50 to $100 on a Diablo 4 expansion with a bunch of extra bells and whistles. And while I realize a lot of people have already discussed this, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit more unique. Now, I'm not going to be talking about how disgusted I am with their idea of doing it in the first place. No, I'm asking what makes them think Diablo 4 is even worth it in the first place. Diablo 4, Blizzard's latest entry into the legendary Diablo series, arrived amidst a whirlwind of anticipation. Promising to usher in a new era for the franchise, the game aimed to recapture the dark essence of its predecessors while introducing innovations to the ARPG genre. Upon its release, Diablo 4 immediately captured attention, with its visually striking world and the promise of a deep and immersive experience. The game boasted enhanced graphics, a sprawling open world, and a narrative that seemed to harken back to the roots of the Diablo saga. However, the honeymoon phase was short-lived. Despite the impressive facade, Diablo 4 struggled to retain its player base. Players began voicing concerns over various aspects of the game, including its lack of depth in gameplay, endgame content variety, no meaningful crafting, lack of storage, poor build variety, and overall replayability began all to surface at once. The players spoke louder than words. A steep decline in active player bases were observed shortly after the game's launch. The exodus was not merely a fluctuation in numbers, but a clear indication that Diablo 4 was not living up to the community's expectations. Longtime fans and newcomers alike expressed their disappointment. Comparisons were inevitably drawn to earlier entries and other titles within the genre, with many feeling that Diablo 4 lacked the captivating magic and complexity that had once defined the genre. As we delve deeper into the controversies surrounding the upcoming expansion and its pricing, it's crucial to understand this backdrop. Diablo 4, a game launched with promise and potential, now stands at a crossroads. Its future hinged on how well it can reconcile with the past and realign with its community's expectations. The launch and the issues that follow have me sitting here scratching my head as to why Blizzard would believe that Diablo 4, an expansion for the game, would be worth the same price as the box price for the game. I mean, $50 to $100, we know most people are going to be sitting in the range of anywhere from $70 to $100 because they have to have that early access if they were to buy it. But why would the players want to invest in a game that didn't meet their expectations the first time around? And it's not like the game has really recovered since then. Even more so, think about the value proposition. Why would you want to charge $50 to $100 for a game where you have competition that's out there right now that's providing a more engaging and more fulfilling experience for far cheaper or even free? In the competitive landscape of action RPGs, Diablo 4 is not an isolated phenomenon. It exists alongside notable titles like Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, and Last Epoch, each one of them bringing a unique flavor to the genre. So let's take a closer look at how Diablo 4 stacks up against some of these competitors. First, there's Path of Exile, a game renowned for its deep character customization, intricate item systems, and free-to-play model that respects players' choice. It has set a high bar for what players expect in terms of content richness and engagement without heavy monetization, with arguably one of the better free-to-play models that are out there. With now over 10 years of continued support for Path of Exile, it's stacked with endgame content systems and a variety of builds, items, and more. Then we have Last Epoch, a newer entrant, yet making significant waves with its engaging time travel storyline, arguably the best crafting system in ARPGs, satisfying combat mechanics, and a transparent development process. It's a testament to how indie studios can compete in a space that's dominated by bigger players. In comparing these games, several key factors emerge. Firstly, the depth of gameplay. Both Path of Exile and Last Epoch offer a level of complexity, depth of content, and customization that keeps players engaged for the long term, whereas Diablo 4 does not. Secondly is the value proposition. These games deliver a wealth of content without pushing players towards aggressive monetization or offering a heavy box price. The gaming community has voiced its opinion loud and clear. While Diablo 4 has its strengths, particularly in its narrative and visual representation, it falls short in areas where Path of Exile and Last Epoch excel. This raises questions about the sustainability of Diablo 4's model, especially in a market that offers high-quality alternatives at a lower cost or even free. As we now look to the controversial pricing strategy of Diablo 4's upcoming expansion, understanding this competitive landscape becomes crucial. It's not about the price tag. It's about the value that the players perceive they are actually getting for their investment. Path of Exile offers bossing, maps, heists, labyrinths, delves, simulacrum, uber blight, crafting, a rich player economy, and the list can go on and on for all kinds of different activities for players to take part in throughout the entire game. Last Epoch gives each skill its own skill tree, multiple specializations per class, an intuitive crafting system, and its unique endgame system called the Monolith. To my knowledge, Diablo 4 offers a barren open world, chaos dungeons, and a couple of bosses that you can use for target farming. Path of Exile and Last Epoch are objectively better games in my opinion. They offer far more content, more player agency, more endgame systems, more items, more everything that you would want out of an ARPG, whereas Diablo 4 does not. And both of these games are offering that for anywhere from $40 to absolutely nothing. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me as to why players would be interested in a Diablo 4 expansion if it was heavily priced. And this is where I think Blizzard is starting to stumble. And while I realize it's their MO to try to take every bit they can and squeeze as much as they possibly can, my question is, what makes them think their game is worth that price in the first place when they're already still on cleanup from the launch? They still haven't fixed many of the issues that are still in the game. There still isn't any increased stash space or anything like that. In fact, the first hint that we have of increased stash space is coming from this expansion, saying that it'll be included in some of these pre-ordered bundles. The other thing to keep in mind too is while the price of these other games is far cheaper, once you are in for the box price for Diablo 4 and then the expansion, you're going to be in the hole for $150 to $200. And money has been meaning a lot more to people over the last couple of years as, well, inflation's kind of done its whole thing. And that's what has me scratching my head. Blizzard should be on the apology tour still. They're not out of the hole yet. So this very much feels like a situation where it's the tail wagging the dog. They're going for the money, but they're not actually offering any value in return. And we're not talking about a game that has popularity now. Its popularity's already dead, and that's something we're going to talk about here in a minute. So that's what makes it even more confusing. Now, I brought this up in a video where I was talking about how much they had spent on their marketing, but this very much feels like they're just trying to force monetization into the game because, well, nobody actually engaged with it when the game was released. According to a leaked survey from Blizzard talking about the upcoming expansion Vessel of Hatred for Diablo 4, the bundles for the expansion are going to include things like a unique hero skin, a unique mount, 1,000 platinum, and other in-game items like a town portal skin and stash tabs. These tiers then escalate in price and content, with the $100 bundle offering extensive in-game perks like 2,000 platinum per season per year. The controversy primarily revolves around the inclusion of elements that many players are going to find pay to win. As an example, higher-priced bundles offer early access to powerful in-game items, legendary aspects, as well as stash tabs, potentially giving players considerable advantage in gameplay. The community's response to this survey has been overwhelmingly critical. Players have expressed their concerns about the monetization of features like stash space, which they expected would come as a free update, and the potential imbalance of introducing early access to powerful items. This criticism reflects a broader concern about the balance between paid and free content in modern games. This situation with Diablo 4's expansion and its pricing isn't just a standalone issue, but a part of a larger conversation in the gaming industry about value, monetization practices, and player expectations. Blizzard is aiming to have Path of Exile's monetization strategy bolted onto a full-price title and a full-priced expansion. That in and of itself is absolutely absurd, but the one thing that I haven't really seen a lot of people discuss is whether or not Diablo 4 even deserves to have that kind of monetization in the first place. And I'm talking about that not as just a player, but also somebody that would be working at a game studio themselves, because they should be asking that themselves. Path of Exile is filled with microtransactions. There are tons of different things that you can buy, but Path of Exile is free to play. It's filled with content. It has a ton of value to provide for players, whereas Diablo 4 has nightmare dungeons and some of the worst boss design that I've seen in years. You can't even see Lilith's attacks. This is a case of a 4 thinking they're an 8. You're bringing nothing to the table and expecting everything in return. I'm sorry, Diablo 4, you're not that pretty. I believe Blizzard's monetization team are pricing the expansion based on the release of Diablo 4 and not the current health of the game or the market. Diablo 4, despite its initial success as Blizzard's fastest-selling game of all time, has witnessed a significant decline in its player count and popularity, especially in the streaming community. The game's presence on Twitch has seen a steep decline. From its peak of over 900,000 viewers at launch, Diablo 4's average daily Twitch viewership dropped dramatically to 4,000 viewers as of recording this video, which means it's lost over 99% of its viewership. This steep fall in viewership suggests not only that it has a declining player base, but also a waning interest amongst the broader gaming community, as the amount of content surrounding Diablo 4 has declined on YouTube, and even its most popular videos about the game are about its decline or its mistakes. Now, while many may believe that Twitch isn't the most accurate way to gauge active players, there are some games that definitely don't fit that mold, like Final Fantasy XIV, but ARPGs do fit that mold. When they are popular and are being played, there is content that's being created around them, and Diablo 4's popularity is obviously waning when many of the creators in the space are turning to other games instead. The sentiment that I have and many other players is that of apathy. Sure, it would be cool if Diablo 4 was a good game, but I don't really care if it improves or not. There are a ton of other options, better options, that already respect my time and my money. Why would I give that to Blizzard? The community's response has been vocal, with many players expressing their dissatisfaction to how Blizzard has managed Diablo 4's live service and responding negatively to Season 1's content and the balance changes. Despite the universal praise of the game's campaign, the endgame content and the subsequent updates have not really been well received, leading to a growing sentiment of discontent among players. While Blizzard has attempted to address some of these issues in Season 2, the game's unstable player count and the community's ongoing concerns paint a challenging picture for Diablo 4. The game's future now hinges on whether or not Blizzard has the ability to re-engage its player base and introduce content that meets the community's expectations. And that's the thing that really confuses me about all this, is that their monetization people, their marketing people, their community managers should know what state the game is in, and that charging these kind of prices, or even thinking about charging these kind of prices, doesn't make a lot of sense, especially in the eyes of the customer or the consumer, or whatever you want to call us, because we just don't see the value in that. This is a situation where, like I said before, the tail is wagging the dog. They're looking at the money, but they're not thinking what they need to do to earn that money in the first place. If they're not stacking the game with content enough to be able to entice players to come back to playing the game, then it's just not going to work. And if you're going to try to hold that behind an expansion, well, that's even worse. Especially when you have Path of Exile 2 and Last Epoch releasing next year. I think February for Last Epoch, and then Path of Exile is supposed to be later in the year, if I'm not mistaken. And then we're just going to have a repeat scenario where, just like Diablo 3 was defeated by Path of Exile, well, Path of Exile 2 is now going to defeat Diablo 4, and Diablo 4 will likely end up like Diablo 3 on maintenance mode. And this all has to do with the fact that they're just trying to force feed monetization into their game. And why I think this is happening is because they didn't make as much money off of the live service as they thought that they would, because the game lost its popularity immediately, evaporated in thin air, completely gone, which means you don't have people that are buying your platinum, that are buying your mounts, that are buying your skins, that are buying all of your other garbage that you want to sell them. And as such, they're looking to try to go in and squeeze for as hard as they can to try to get as much money as they can, because they probably over-invested in the game during its initial development. And all of that marketing expenses that they paid out and everything else that they did. They're trying to cover up for mistakes, but the problem is you can't do it that way. And sure, you might be able to rake in a few dollars off of the Diablo 4 expansion, but I don't think it's enough to cover the whole. And even more than that, you're really leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't have an effective live service, especially as a company that only makes live service games. Honestly, it's kind of embarrassing. Blizzard. Anyway, that's all I got for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Just a thought thing, experiment of sorts. Let you kind of sizzle on that a little bit. I try to inform consumers, inform the customers on ways to think differently about their purchases or upcoming purchases in the future, and this is one that I will not be making. So maybe you think about it and you go, well, I think they're doing great. I think they're actually, turning in the right direction, and then you go and buy it. That's cool. Hope you enjoy it. But personally, I don't think they've done enough, and I don't think that they will. But that's just me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, my friends. See you in the next video. Peace.